Welcome to OG Unfiltered. I'm your host, Cheech, and I'm here with Jim Davis, the founder of OG Empire Trade Group. Hey, Jim. Thanks for coming by.
How's it going? Glad to be here.
Good. So we're here in a new year. It's 2025. We're officially a decade into legalization for recreational adult use cannabis.
Yeah.
You know, you've been through that whole ride.
Yep.
We've caught up on Cheechable with Lee Berger, who was really instrumental. He's an attorney who was instrumental in writing a lot of the framework we utilize today.
Yeah.
But I guess I want to understand that from your perspective, because we've gotten the OG Empire Trade Group up and running over this past year. You've been on the road a ton, just immersing yourself in kind of the commercial and the cultural side of things. Let's get a little summary, like a kind of high level of the past 10 years, and then what have you seen in the past year as we've been kind of out and about, and how things have evolved?
It's weird. It's like when we started out 10 years ago, it was like everybody was excited. And the world was the limit, like you could do anything. People were making good money, making a good living. And we've just seen that kind of slowly, that price marker pull back and draw down further and further and further. And we've been seeing people come and go, people age out, or they just get tired, or, and it's just, I feel like it's become more homogenized, we're seeing more and more brands pop up. They're just bigger, having more SKUs, and then there's less small and small. And that's why we started the Empire, was to celebrate that craft here, make sure they don't go away. But price is the big thing, We went from making really good money and being able to pay everybody well to just every year, we've seen it just knock off and go down. And the other day we heard a report, a couple of different reports. One was really, really bad, and one was really, really good on pricing. But then when we realized, when we got later over lunch, we were like, wait, those aren't that far apart. We're talking about a real narrow space and it's hard. It's just really hard, That's the big thing I see, is price.
Yeah. I'm thinking, because things are so cyclical, and I remember I'd say it was probably 2018 where the market hit a $400 pound.
Oh yeah.
And
that was awful.
Yeah, and
people were calling and just crying and running, and nobody knew what it feels like that this year.
Yeah, okay, that was my question.
I'm gonna be real. This year, a lot of people are in between the lines. They're like, this is my last year. I may not even plant this year.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing a lot of people. It's weird now. A lot of people are talking about it's cheaper to just shut down.
Yeah.
Than to run.
Yeah.
And so that's a weird space. And with 1,400 active farms in Oregon, I'm curious how many of those are going to run their outdoor season, or especially with that new number.
Right.
Is it, because there's a bottom. There's a bottom where you just can't operate for any less.
Right.
And it's getting close.
It's getting close.
Really close.
And we did see more grows close last year, or, kind of wrap up throughout the year. And then what else? Because it's other things too.
Well, I'm starting to wonder too, I think as, we all kind of came out of the dark ages, and now we're learning agronomy, now we're learning how agriculture works. And at that 10-year mark, I'm wondering if we're not going to see cycles like other agriculture, where we did the other day, where they were saying as long as out of 10 years we win 3, we're good.
Right.
And I'm wondering if we're not going to we're in that growing pain, where for weed who never had to experience that, we've always been tied to the price of gold. The pound's always been worth what gold was. That's how I grew up. And so now we're not in that space. We don't have that backing. So is it a 10-year cycle now? Are there microcycles? And I think that's what people are having to learn. They're still around.
Right. Yeah. No, I like that, and I think that's something cool that came out, I think, this year, right, or at the end of last year, where New York has declared cannabis an agricultural product.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that, and I want to see how that's going to impact some of the shifts on how we deal with just the commerce side of things.
Right. What do we get out? Yeah. How does that work now? That's going to be good. It should also, and that lends in more into the whole reschedule, declassify talk that seems to keep going.
Yeah. So, okay, influx. But, I think that's a good thing to note is that a decade is a long time and it's a short time when
Yeah.
you're kind of building a whole new
Whole new thing.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so let's bring it back to kind of this, more regional, localized.
Okay.
What are things? What's going on in the retail space? Kind of.
Yeah.
What have you noticed as far as maybe trends for sales?
Yeah. I think overall people this last year spent less money at the dispensary than the years before, like per exchange, right? And so, and I think that's inflation, like it's finally tapping a lot of people out. And I think that is a lot. Well, we're also seeing like people aren't buying as much concentrates.
Right.
Like even though hash, on Instagram, hash looks like it's the only thing selling. When you actually start talking to people and you actually start watching the shelf and what people are carrying out, it's not hash.
Right.
And that goes back to money. And so I think everybody's buying more flour, and like we talked about, like I think some people are just pressing their own rosin. Some people are rolling their own pre-rolls. Some people are like, we're at that money point where it's like, oh, I got to go back to DIY.
Right.
Where I got to do everything. And
Yeah.
that's cool because we love flour. So it's like, it's cool, but
Exactly.
like it's a weird trend, and like I don't know when that'll cycle back.
Well, I think that's kind of a cool way to bridge into, the next thing that I wanted to touch on is kind of where we are culturally in this space too, because, Oregon Rec was really positioned like alcohol into liquor store kind of models, but we aren't really given a space to socialize, right? So you can produce, you can sell, and you can buy as a consumer, but you can't consume.
Your taxed product
Yeah.
in a public space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it kind of brings me a little bit back what you were saying about concentrates. And I know that we've had conversations about, how that aligns with alcohol and, what we see in alcohol consumption, the trends are going way down, right? And does that match the consumption of concentrates? Are we in kind of a new wave or a new cycle of like wellness and awareness, and people are kind of pivoting into?
This makes me excited because we talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to be honest, and I can send your hate mail to the OG Empire. I feel like during the pandemic, like a lot of people, for lack of a better, easier way to say it, crawled up in their addictions. Like a lot of people kind of went hard with the wine, kind of went hard with the alcohol. I went hard with mushrooms for a while. Like, there was nowhere to go. And so I think everybody kind of rolled out of the pandy kind of like, oh, maybe I need to reevaluate what I'm doing. And so I think, the wine, I'm out in wine country where I live, and like the latest reports are 18 to 20% down in wine sales last year. And it's especially amongst the Gen Z and the millennials, Gen Z, where they're just like, I don't seem to interact well with alcohol, which is kind of, for me, kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a positive win there. And then like, I think across the board too, where we've seen people just kind of walk away from some of these things that they, maybe have interacted with. Maybe it's a dependency, or like all these little spaces where people are kind of, and it's money too.
Yep.
Like I got to let go of this. I can't have the coffee out. I can't have that extra dab.
Right.
And so I think that we're seeing that. And I think people are becoming more smart with it. And I think we see the next generation, I hate to say it, really seeing weed like medicine, like we taught, that like our group maybe didn't. You know what I mean? Like they really see it. What the seeds we planted, they're harvesting, and we're still kind of rolling in, dab oblivion.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I've started hearing. I think the holidays are also kind of a pinnacle of excessive consumption, right? As everybody's kind of encouraged in that direction. But as we closed out the year, because we were still out there selling, even though there was a buy freeze.
The December buy freeze.
Yeah.
We ignored that and just kept knocking on doors.
I know. So we were out there talking to people, and you could see that just the attitude towards concentrates shifting, even in the staff, where they really love the experience. They love, you know, having something a little bit more refined than just flower. Something, you know, like a dab is convenient, right? If you're just gonna just knock it back, you've got, you know, an accelerated amount of cannabinoids going throughout your body, and then you're out the door, right? But I think what we saw a lot of is people were just saying, I'm just utilizing so much product and I'm not getting the effects. My tolerance is blasted. And then when I think about it and I'm in that space of just it's not hitting, and I'm using more and using more, the reflection goes to, but I guess I really just like the way the flower experience is anyway.
Yeah, over the years, the people that talk about taking a tolerance break are never the flower smoker.
Yeah.
I feel like it's always someone consuming concentrated, you know, and they've just blasted their receptors so many times that it needs to grow back.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can smoke enough flower. It'd be a part-time job to achieve that, you know what I mean? And so I don't see that amongst flower users very often, but I always see it amongst concentrate users.
I know I do. I do every once in a while, because I'll go hard on a strain and just like, I don't know if it's strain fatigue,
I was going to
right?
say this, it might be strain fatigue.
So there's something else there, you know, maybe that's worth looking more into, kind of how, you know, flower versus concentrate, strain fatigue versus tolerance break, kind of those mechanisms.
Yeah, I do see people too backing off because of money, and then they're realizing that. They're like, oh, what was I doing with those last 5 dabs? Like, what was during the day? Like, what was that really doing for me other than keeping me kind of tatered and like, I'm, you know, and I don't need to be in that space, or like, this feels good, you know. We're all patients, and everybody's using it for one reason or another, whether they realize it or not.
Right.
You know, we did that for years. I didn't know what it was doing, but I knew I did better.
Right.
You know, and like, yeah, so I think we're going to see that more focused use.
Yeah.
Because of the cost.
I think so too.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe more intentionality will kind of grow out of that, and we can, I don't know, bring that into the next wave, I guess I'm calling it, of, you know, mindfulness, wellness, intentionality, intentional living, and then social spaces too, right? Because we have this alcohol model. We see people kind of trying to recreate a bar scene with cannabis, and that's just really hard because you end up just yelling at people. You know, you can't hear.
It's kind of set up to like be with people but be alone, and you can't hear people. It's smoky. It's, you know, I don't get that. I don't know. I'm looking for that coffee shop, sit down, have a quiet convo, and smoke a joint.
Yeah.
You know, what is that?
So there's obviously the future is wide open. What kind of things are you looking forward to? Because we know that things are cyclical. We're kind of in a down space right now, but with that comes an upswing, right?
So I think everybody's holding their breath for descheduling, rescheduling, whatever that means. And then that is going to set the pace for everything. Yeah, because we could be able to consume in lounges, or we could be able to consume, or we lose total control and it ends up in Fred Meyer and Kroger.
Right.
It could go either way.
Yeah, so I think that's really it, right, is people are in that gray area.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, okay, if it goes to Fred Meyer or if it goes to just pharma in general, then, okay, well, we still have our backdoor spaces. And, you know, I think that's really what people are waiting for, because really, even if you are distributed throughout the state, you can't compete with Kroger. I don't care how successful your business is.
It's a whole ball of wax, right? Like I see a day where dispensaries are phased out just out of sheer price and the convenience. I think they'll be there for a while, but yeah, a lot of these brands are getting so much bigger and becoming, you know, the MSO that Fred Meyer doesn't want to talk to the mom and pop place. They can't help them.
Yeah.
Only this large group can, and so you just kind of get wiped out.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think dispensaries are on like a finite path. Unless we
Yeah.
figure that out. Unless we figure out like liquor stores where they have to stay in that system. And
Yeah.
God, you got me all started.
Good.
Yeah. No, I think weed should mirror. I don't understand why it doesn't mirror alcohol, where it's cash on delivery, all these things, and we can write stuff off.
Yeah, all of the ways that it makes sense, but instead we get all of the ways that it's really toxic and oppressive.
Abusive.
Abusive.
It's abusive.
Yeah.
Like, if I sold alcohol, I could keep those cases in my garage on a layover day of sales. Mm-hmm. I can't do that with weed because it's so magical. I have to store it somewhere else. And I don't understand those kinds of things. I don't understand.
Yeah, yeah.
How
So
we're going to make it.
we have opportunities to shift some policy. So yeah, I mean, this is just the way it's gone, right?
Right. Well, I feel like this next 2 years is the way of policy because we're going to die. Where we're at, we just can't make it. You know,
No.
we're losing half of every dollar we make because we can't write stuff off, and now it's worth even less. So they have to do something. They have to give us an outlet. They have to give us.
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
gonna
it
lose
just
$2 billion a year.
becomes deprioritized. I mean, that's just the way that it's always been, right? It's always a hot ticket campaign item,
Oh, they love
and
to talk about
then
it.
immediately deprioritized once
Well,
the campaigning
They've
is
already
over.
canceled the meeting or session to talk about descheduling. Already rescheduled it. And
Yep.
It's just like, oh, here we go. Same old thing. Same new boss, same old game.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so we'll kind of just probably keep operating in the same liminal space.
And we'll keep losing people. And we'll keep losing talent. And they'll go to the other side
Yep.
until there's just the other side. And
Yeah.
unless we do something.
Well, what is that? What do we have to do?
Honestly, they have to legalize. That's the only way. To me, every conversation I have where someone has either crashed and burned or they're facing oblivion or it's a problem comes back to, I can't write anything off. I can't recoup my costs like a normal business.
Yeah.
So half your money right out of the gate's just gone.
Yep.
And I don't know anybody else that would do business like that. I'm gonna run 2 tires, not 4, for this race.
Right.
Willingly walk in and do that. Yeah. So it takes special people, and they're gonna have to help us out. And they're gonna have to make it like food or just something normal.
Yeah. Agriculture.
Agriculture.
I think that's something that I would like to see. I know I have a personal bias towards that, but I think I'm always focused on access, and I still don't think that we live in a legal framework because there's no accessibility beyond
Right.
the purchase.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
That's the state of the market.
yeah, what are you excited? Give us one hit for the future, like something kind of, I don't know, like your dream. What's Jim's big dream?
Right. INIG. Is that we've talked about that, the idea of dabs being at Fred Meyer. And then you have to realize, I know we both got in this for accessibility, even if it meant it wasn't from us.
Yeah.
We just wanted people to walk up and have safe, clean access every hour of the day. And so I do kind of see that happen. My dream for the year, I don't know, I want people to rediscover flower, and I think it's happening. I hate saying that, but keep harping on it, but that's
Yeah.
what it is. I want to see people going back to the beginning, going back to the starting point. I want to see people, and it's happening. We're seeing older strains come back.
I love it.
Yeah, and we're seeing older strain crosses come back with a new spin, which is cool.
Yep.
That's what I want to see this summer.
Cool.
It's just a lot of bright, crisp strains, a lot of sativa leaning, and people spending money and having money to spend.
Yep.
And showing up to events and showing up to community. That would be the dream.
I'm excited for it. I'm excited. I always love, the future because you never know what's going to happen, and sometimes it's actually good.
Yeah. I'll quote you on that. Sometimes it's actually good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on OG Unfiltered.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And, stay tuned for the OG Invitational Cup and more OG Unfiltered right here on Teachable Livin'.